But now we've had some time to think about it, digest it a little bit. Dave, I know you did a lot of Stefon Diggs digging. Digging. I didn't even know where I was going. I didn't even realize the pun I was walking into there. I know you did a lot of Diggsing yesterday. What are your updated thoughts on Stefon Diggs going to the Texans?
You're definitely Stefon your game today, Adam. So the first thing I wanted to figure out was why and how Houston decided to get Diggs. And on the surface, it's easy. He's a good wide receiver who can add to an already great receiving core. But I checked into a couple of stats with Stroud. Here's the first one. On the season, he had a 58.7% completion rate on third downs. That was 21st among qualifying quarterbacks. Before the Dell injury, it was better. It was 62.3. That was still 15th. So that's the very first area. I think Diggs can come in and immediately be that money down type of receiver to help move the chains for Houston. I also think he's going to end up in the slot. I think he's there to take all of the work away from Noah Brown and Robert Woods. And those guys were primarily Houston slot receivers last year. I think Diggs can do that. I mentioned this yesterday. I still think he's going to move in and out. I think all three of the receivers will play all three spots. But my hunch is that Diggs is going to end up being the guy who plays the most in the slot. I also watched a lot of Stefon Diggs from last year to see, all right, did he lose a step? Does he suck? What's going on? He's quicker than fast. I don't think he's got the same type of deep speed that he once had, but he can still get open. He still has great footwork. He still has great hands, made a slew of really tough catches last year, just not in the game against Kansas City. He kind of botched that one, and that's the impression that he'll leave with the Buffalo coaching staff, along with what he did off the field. I still think he can play, and I still think that he has a shot to be the team leader in targets, catches, and even touchdowns. Where I think he's going to struggle is yardage, because they've got Tank Dell, they've got Nico Collins. Those guys can stretch the field. As part of my work, I watch both of those guys. And man, like Tank is fast. Everybody knows that. Nico is fast too. At worst, Nico is as fast as Stefon Diggs was last year. At best, he's definitely faster. So I would say that he's faster. He can move just as well. It's going to be a target crunch. It's going to stink. But I think we will see more yards per catch for Nico Collins than for Stefon Diggs. I think that makes Nico the slight favorite to be the best for fantasy in PPR. I think it's a no-brainer that he's the best in non-PPR. I think Diggs is third best in non-PPR and in half PPR. Wow. But in full PPR, I think that we will see Tank and Diggs very close to each other. I think all three qualify as top 24 wide receivers. And when you've got that, you obviously have to move up the quarterback. There was, what was the stat that I found? All right, 7 games. There were 7 games last year where both Tank and Nico played at least 60% of the snaps. CJ Stroud averaged almost 28 fantasy points per game. Now we're adding Diggs. I think it's a no-brainer. I didn't say this yesterday. I wish I had. CJ Stroud is definitely a top 5 fantasy quarterback.
And so what were your PPR rankings again of these 3 receivers?
I've got Nico. I think Nico's at 17 among wide receivers. None of them are top 2 round picks for me. Nico's at 17. I've got him as a late 3rd rounder. I've got Diggs at 22. He's a late 4th rounder. And Tank Dell right behind him. He's at 24. So borderline number 2, number 3 wide receiver Tank Dell.
I thought you said Dell was going to be better than Diggs.
In non-PPR.
Oh, non-PPR, sorry.
Yeah. And half. And
that's still kind of low on Collins and Diggs, I think, based on just the way we reacted yesterday. Mm-hmm. Well, at least what Heath said, he thought Collins first part of early part of round 3 to mid part of round 3, Diggs mid to late round 3, where you said Collins late round 4, Diggs late round 3.
No, late round 3 on Collins, late round 4 on Diggs.
And Jamie, where are you?
I'm taking Cooper Kupp ahead of Diggs. I'm taking Higgins. While I'm a little lower on those guys than consensus, I'll take those guys ahead of Diggs easy. Drake London, Pittman ahead of all 3 of these Texans receivers for now.
Jamie, how about you? Now that you've had a day to think about it, your thoughts on Diggs to the Texans?
I think Collins is the best receiver. I have him ranked in a very similar range to Dave. Diggs would be the 2nd receiver, also in a similar range. Dell is outside the top 24. I was thinking about this yesterday. The only example that I could come up with where there was a season of 3 receivers in the top 24 on the same team was the Broncos with Peyton Manning when he threw 55 touchdowns.
Yeah, Dave and I did this morning, actually. So there was one season where you had 3 top 25 guys recently, and that was the Carolina Panthers in 2020 with Robbie Chosen Anderson, Curtis Samuel, and DJ Moore. But I'm not really going to count it because Curtis Samuel had 200 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. He would not have been top 24 or 5 without that. So you're right. There was that. It was also, Dave pointed this one out, the 2004 Colts with Stokely, Wayne, and Harrison, not in the reverse order. And of course, Peyton Manning. In both of those seasons, just like the Broncos season you mentioned, he threw, it was like 5,400 yards and 52 touchdowns or something like that. 55 is insane. So yeah, it's very hard to have 3 top.
Yeah, there's not going to be the 3 Texans finishing as top 24 receivers. So it's going to be who's the odd man out. And I'm going to guess it's probably Dell, just because I think he'll be 3rd in targets. So he's the one I'd be the most concerned about. But I feel like Diggs may get overdrafted because of his name and going to a situation where people think he might be happier.
You want to know what's crazy, Jamie, about that 2013 Broncos season? You had Demaryius Thomas was the number 1 receiver in fantasy, Eric Decker number 9, Wes Welker number 21, and Julius Thomas was the number 2 tight end with 12 touchdowns in 14 games. We're never going to see something like that. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all right, good stuff. Thank you for updating us on your thoughts there, guys.